Thank you very much for joining. My name is Darren Joseph from HCJ.tax. We're a team that seeks to demystify the sometimes confusing world of cross-border taxation. And today we have the honor and privilege of joining us, Claudia Vasconcelos. Please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Darren, first of all, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss and explain the advantages of investing and living in Madeira. This is a topic that is very dear to me. I'm born and raised on the islands. I am currently head of business development of NewCo. We are a one-stop shop for investors and expatriates in Portugal. We're headquartered in Madeira. And most of my career has been dedicated and devoted to the attraction of foreign investments to Portugal, specifically to Madeira, or mostly in particular to Madeira. I've actually worked for about 18 years in the entity that is still today the government entity in charge of promoting the International Business Centre of Madeira. And for the past 10 years, I joined NewCo, and we are actively promoting and assisting investors and expats relocating in Portugal and particularly in Madeira.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
What exactly is the International Business Centre of Madeira?
Well, the International Business Centre is actually a concept. It's not contrary to what sometimes people believe when we read about it or hear about it. It's not a physical space. It's a special tax regime that was created by Portugal back in the 80s. And it was created as a tool to modernize, diversify, and internationalize the economy of Madeira. For those who don't know, Madeira is a small island economy located in the middle of the Atlantic. We're actually closer to Africa than to the EU, but this gives us a special status under the European Union Treaty. So we are classified as an outermost region of the European Union. And as a small island economy, this leads to several constraints. These are constraints that unfortunately, in spite of our efforts, we cannot change. We have a small internal market. To give you an idea, about 250,000 inhabitants. 2/3 of the island is protected natural park. We have high transaction costs, that arise from the remoteness and distance from the decision centers. And we are dependent and have been mostly dependent on one single economic product. And this is mostly the tourism. It is still today the main sector of our economy. So back in the 80s, the government understood that we had to create alternatives. And we looked at the examples of other small island economies, and we understood that the most efficient tool was to attract foreign investments. So based on the examples, we defined what we wanted as a product, and it was mostly a services center and an industrial center. That's the nature of the program. But as Portugal was negotiating at the time the accession to the European Union, which happened in 1986, the special tax regime was already included and approved by the European Commission. So when we joined the EU, this was already included as a benefit that we were entitled to have, because the Treaty of Rome foresaw that state aid, although illegal, is possible for regional economic purposes. So that was the fundament of our approval, let's say, for this special tax regime. One important consideration, and I believe that made all the difference, and a strong difference with regard to other free trade zones and special centers that at the time already were also approved, namely the Canary Islands in Spain, was that since the beginning we chose to be fully integrated in the European system, namely in terms not only of tax but also for customs purposes. So an EU company, for all due respects, there's absolutely no limitation, no difference. The certificate of tax residence is a Portuguese certificate of tax residence, and most important, because of this full integration, investors have full access to the European Union markets as any other EU company. So all the directives and regulations apply fully to a Madeira company, which in fact doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a Madeira company. It's just the term that we use to distinguish it in terms of tax regime. From a legal purposes, it's exactly the same as any other Portuguese company. It might be interesting, Darren, to discuss a little bit the procedure, because I think this impacts also with other questions that you will have next. The European Commission has to approve the regime. So it's not a benefit that Portugal per se decides, and it has to be in line with the state aid rules and regulations. So for many years, the first regime was approved in 1987. Just 1 year after Portugal entered the EU, and it's the one characteristic is that the regime is approved for a specific period in time. So we can only accept new entities. Initially, it was for 3 years, with a production of effects that is longer, because of course the investors need some certainty and some time to get the benefits of investing in the islands. So the first regime was approved starting 1989. That was the formal start of the regime until the 31st of December 2011. And during these periods, every 3 years, Portugal requested a renewal and the European Commission approved it. This is relevant because it means that the European Commission has always, since the beginning, looked and analyzed and evaluated both the impact in the economy, but also the implementation of the benefits. This was the grounds for the renewal. And everything went smoothly until 2011. Then, around 1995, let us say, the OECD discussions in terms of harmful tax competition start, and even within the EU also there were discussions about the tax havens, let us say, and privileged tax regimes, which I must say Madeira was never included and was never considered as a harmful tax regime, but we had to align as nowadays.
So if you're a 6, 7, or 8-figure investor, entrepreneur, or business owner who needs a tailor-made solution from a qualified team of professionals, we can help you achieve the international lifestyle, the freedom, and even the tax savings you're looking for. Visit us at htj.tax and live that international life.